Curdy Trades here, and today we're going to go over all the differences between the Subaru Impreza and the Subaru Crosstrek. Now, these two cars are touted as being almost identical to one another, and that is very true because I would say about 99.5% of all the parts on the car are interchangeable. That includes the majority of the seats, the majority of the body panels, almost the entire engine. I'm going to go over the major differences first, so the ones that are more noticeable, and then I'm going to go into some of the more subtle ones that you don't really notice when you look on the surface of the vehicle. And then I'm also going to go into some of the other differences, and this has to do with the different generations because there are two generations of the Crosstrek and there's a new one coming out very soon, so there's about 3 different generations where these two overlap each other. And typically the Impreza comes out 1 year before the Crosstrek does. So I'm going to include that first initial model year for the Impreza in that generation of the Crosstrek as well. Now, obviously the biggest one that people see is the black plastic cladding that the Crosstrek has that the Impreza does not. And it's got a different bumper on the front and the back, and it has these big arches that are black plastic. Give it that more rugged look. And then the second most important one is the lift. And the Crosstrek runs about 3 inches higher of ground clearance. Not all of it's from the suspension. The tires are a little bit taller as well. So it's got a little bit more off-roady tires. They're basically street all seasons, but they are a little bit more rugged than the Impreza has. They have a little bit more of a street-based tire. The total ground clearance is the Impreza is about 5.5 inches and the Crosstrek is about 8.5 inches of ground clearance. If you know of any other differences, post them in the comments below in case I forgot them. And if you thought some of these were pretty neat or you didn't know about them, let me know about that as well. So besides the ground clearance and the cladding, the other big difference that the Crosstrek has is it's set up to be a little bit more rugged. It also has a 1,500-pound towing capacity. And to accomplish that, it also needs to have a little bit of upgraded suspension and mechanical parts. So the things that they change for that are the brakes are a little larger on the fronts only. It has a front sway bar that's a little bit thicker, 24 millimeter versus the 22 millimeter on the Impreza. Other things as well are the struts are a little bit beefier to, again, give it a little bit higher ground clearance and better off-road capabilities. It has a different differential in the back, again, to beef it up for towing. The CVT transmission does have a different part number. It is slightly beefier. I believe it's from the torque converter to help with the towing again. And then it does have a 6-speed manual versus the Impreza's 5-speed manual. You can't get a 6-speed in the Impreza. The axles as well on the Crosstrek are a little bit beefier too, again, to help with the off-road capabilities and just in terms of overall reliability with the towing that they have. The Crosstrek also has a little bit larger gas tank. It's about 2 gallons larger than the Impreza is. Now the next set that I'm going to go through, these ones aren't necessarily different than the Impreza for the Crosstrek, but typically the Crosstrek will have these as standard features where you would have to get a higher trim model than the base model on the Impreza to get some of these features. For example, the Crosstrek comes with 17-inch alloy standard. You have to upgrade to the premium or the limited or the sport model for the Impreza to get the 17-inch rim. Some of the other ones include like the roof rack, for example. The roof rack is not standard on the base model Impreza. It's on the limited, the premium, and the sport. And all the Crosstreks have that standard. So the roof rack is always going to be on a Crosstrek. You have to get certain trims in the Impreza to get the roof rack as well. Same with the rear sway bar. The sport model that I have here has a rear sway bar standard, but the base model does not have a rear sway bar. All of the Crosstreks come with a rear sway bar. So there are some other subtle differences with the different model years and with the different trims that you can get. All the Crosstreks typically have the same features unless you're talking about electronics on the inside, for example. But in terms of mechanical ones, most of the Crosstreks are very similar.
Crosstreks came standard with fog lights as well, and the Impreza, that was an option on some of the higher models, or it could be added on as a dealer option for the base model.
The Crosstrek was also available in a hybrid model, and the Impreza did not have that option.
The colors are also different among generations and between the Impreza, the Crosstrek, and also the hybrid. I made this chart here so you can kind of see. The big takeaway from here is that the Impreza and the Crosstrek have pretty similar color schemes. Generally, the Crosstrek will have a few colors that the Impreza does not. For example, on the first gen, the tangerine orange and the sunshine orange. For the second gen was a Crosstrek only color. Otherwise, they have pretty similar colors. They all get a couple different whites, a couple different blacks, grays, those sorts of things, silvers, and those are pretty similar among generations and the different models. And then the hybrid kind of has its own custom color as well. It's different from the normal Crosstrek. It typically has a black, a white, a gray. And then the first gen hybrid only has the plasma green, which is one of the only green colors across the line. That's kind of a brighter green. And then the second gen gets the lagoon blue pearl. And then there are some small differences too between the Impreza and Crosstrek for colors. The Impreza, for example, get the ocean blue pearl, and the Crosstrek gets the quartz blue. So there's a few small differences. Same with the red. The red is slightly different on the second gen.
And then the only other big changes that they have, it has to do with the transmissions and the larger motor, because with the second gen Crosstrek, they added the 2.5 engine and they made it so that's only available with a CVT. And that is not available on the Impreza at all for those model years. For the newest model year, the third generation Crosstrek, the 2024 model, they added the 2.5 RS for the Impreza, which you can get as well. So that does match up with the Crosstrek again. So the 2.5 liter motor was only available on the second gen Crosstrek in the Sport model, and it wasn't available at all in the Impreza. In the current model, the 2024 Plus, they did add the 2.5 back into the Impreza. So you can get the 2.5 liter engine in both of those with the current model year. Now, the one thing that Crosstrek owners are kind of upset about is they removed the manual transmission option for the Crosstrek altogether. You cannot get a manual Crosstrek after 2023. The 2024 model year, they removed the manual transmission, so it's CVT only for the Crosstrek. And they are actually keeping the manual transmission for the Impreza for the 2024 model year. So that is one of the rare situations where there's something the Impreza can get that the Crosstrek cannot get.